want to build amazing infrastructure that really solves problems and helps move the community forward as Muslims, then we need to build things that are paid. The money is used to pay for engineers and teams to go full-time and work on it 24/7 so that they can really, really push it forward. Historically, people would pay their teachers to teach them fiqh. That wasn't problematic. I think we need to kind of reset that mindset, because if we don't, we might be pushing ourselves backwards, and we might end up putting ourselves in a situation where we actually we're not moving as fast. Arab Muslim kid, the be-all and end-all of life is to become a doctor. I was known to be like the IT kid. Like when something went wrong with a teacher's computer, they'd call me up. My big drive has always been, how do I solve things at mass scale? Like, how can I build something that millions use? And that is much harder to do as an individual doctor. Jibreel is the Duolingo for fiqh. Muslims don't know their fard ayn. They don't know the most obligatory knowledge that every single Muslim needs to do. We do obligatory acts like pray and fast and wudu and ghusl and all of these things. To be able to do those acts correctly, we need to know the knowledge that is required for those obligatory acts.
Before we start this episode, I want to flag that only 5% of you are subscribed to the channel, so please do consider subscribing, as it does help out the channel and does help bring out better guests in the future.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Abdul Rahman is a medical doctor and the founder of Pillars, a prayer app used by over 1 million Muslims worldwide. More recently, he's launched Jibreel, which he describes as the Duolingo for fiqh, teaching Islamic knowledge through bite-sized lessons. Abdul Rahman is also a pioneer of the Muslim tech community and known for his building in public approach. He's now left medicine to focus full-time on his tech ventures. In this conversation, I want to discuss balancing medicine with entrepreneurship, building Pillars and growing it to over 1 million users, and his vision for the Muslim tech community. Abdul Rahman, thanks for coming on.
Assalamu alaikum, Sahib. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, all good, all good.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, it's quite funny. I've known you for a few years, and you're like one of the most entrepreneur guys that I know.
Really?
You're always like cooking up
You're
something.
Just being nice to me.
Nah, I'm glazing you up. But you're always like working on like multiple different projects.
Alhamdulillah.
But something I found quite funny is that you're a doctor. You were studying medicine when I first met you.
Yeah, where did we first meet actually? I'm trying to think.
It was I first saw you at the Wahed X launch event in 2022.
Okay,
Yeah. So I saw you on stage and I was like, wow, this guy, must be something special.
Okay, alhamdulillah. I think that I was on that stage a bit prematurely, I would say, but alhamdulillah.
No, it was a good talk. So yeah, I think we met just after that. But yeah, like where did you get this idea that you wanted to go into medicine? Because it doesn't really like tie up when I see like some of your entrepreneurial ventures.
No, that's a fair question. You're right. So I grew up as a obviously Arab Muslim kid. Arab background, like the be-all and end-all of life is to become a doctor, like that's what your Arab parents want. That's like what the community considers like you've made it kind of mindset, right?
Yeah.
So I personally, like when I actually reflect back on it, when I was really young, like when I was a kid, etc., I definitely was on that potential trajectory to be like someone who likes to build those like kids who like build websites and like do like IT, like hacky,
hustling away, lots of different side projects and stuff,
like that classic like 12-year-old that's building websites for like the local businesses, that kind of thing. But I actually think it was somewhat, I don't know if I can say suppressed, but I just like I didn't really engage with it as much because what I was surrounded by, like my parents, they come from a very medical, my mum's a doctor, my dad's like a like sciencey background. All our family friends were doctors. All our, like, when we were sitting in gatherings, it was like, this person's this specialist and this person's that specialist. Like, that was genuinely my life. And it really does impact you when you're surrounded by an environment. You are going to look up to them. You are going to, like, I want to be just like those people, because those are the people that are lauded in front of you as being successful. So I kind of almost suppressed that innate feeling of wanting to be more of a tech kind of person, I would say. So I ended up kind of like, I actually, to be fair to you, when I got to sixth form, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'm just going to do my best in exams. And like in my head, it was like, okay, the best thing that you can do is become a doctor. So I'm just going to apply to be a doctor. And so I got into medicine. And yeah, I mean, it was during medical school, I was like, okay, now like you're kind of in the pathway, and like halfway through the medical school, we had like a kind of what they call an intercalated year, like almost like a year doing something else, like a minor kind of thing. like the US system has. I ended up thinking, okay, let me explore other interests. So I did things like, I did this thing called Kickstart London, which was like a accelerator, but for like university kids in London.
Nice.
And I just started doing like coding courses, design courses, honestly. And that was like when I was like, it reignited, you know, that initial like thing that I had. I was known to be like the IT kid.
Yeah.
Like when something went wrong with a teacher's computer,
They'd call you.
they'd call me up as a little
Abdul Rahman, sort it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like honestly, because like for them, they were baffled at it.
Yeah.
Like, what USB, what's this? Like what, how do I eject my USB?
That's funny.
Like small stuff like that, but I was quite young. And anyway, so that reignited in me. I was like, I absolutely love it. The thing is that I love problem solving. You do have an element of that, obviously very much in tech. You're literally like the whole idea of entrepreneurship is to find problems that people care about. They have to care about it. You can't just find any problem. I think that's where people go wrong. And then solve them. And medicine actually has that as well, right? Someone's come to you with a problem as well, and they're trying to get you to solve it. And you find out from talking to them, from doing investigations, scans, et cetera, et cetera. So those things I think overlapped and made me like enjoy both to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But I think my big drive has always been, how do I solve things at mass scale? Like how can I build something that millions use? And that is much harder to do as an individual doctor. You can do it if you decide to go into health tech. But as an individual doctor, you can't really do that. There's only so many people you can see in a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my long-winded answer.
No, that's good. How did that lead to you building Pillars then? Because I think during universities where this app like first kind of started, like what's the story of how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was in medical school. As I mentioned, I was in my like intercalated year. That's when I started exploring things. As a part of that, I started like doing like different like kind of business ideas, platforms. I built something called MedMentor, which was supposed to help like applicants, like people who wanted to apply to go to medical school, like helping them get mentors. That was like the first version of it. We built a platform where you could basically book a call with someone and have a call with a medical student so they can help you with your application. And then anyway, I did like a few different like kind of like business ideas. A lot of them failed, to be honest. And then I got to a point where honestly the thing is, subhanAllah, like when I reflect on it, it was like the least intentional time that I wanted to build a business was when it works the best for me. So Pillars came by because I saw the news, and there was like big news, I think it was in 2020, that like this big, multiple apps actually, Muslim apps, which have hundreds of millions of users that loads of Muslims were using for their prayer times, etc., were sharing data with third-party data brokers. And those data brokers were sharing it with foreign intelligence agencies. And so that, for me, when I saw that, I was like, how can something so integral, like a prayer app, have such a really bad user experience? Why am I getting ads every time I open it? Why am I getting inappropriate ads as well? Ads that I can't dismiss. And then at the same time, and an awful design, and then at the same time, they are taking all our data and sharing it and selling it. Like that's not something that integral is, in my opinion, like infrastructurally critical. It's like national security level, like vulnerability for us to have something that important to Muslims be exposed. So in my head, I was like, we need to do something about that. So alhamdulillah, at the time, my co-founder Tariq and I, we were both students at UCL, and said, let's build something. We were planning to just build it in public and open source it and just kind of share it out there. And
what was the thinking of doing it open source, just for the transparency?
Again, transparency was part of it, but actually the other part of it was like we had no intentions to build it into a business. And so in our heads, we were like, why don't we just do something that we just wanted to build an open source project. So I actually had the mindset at the time of being very stealthy. Like, I can't share my ideas. Someone's going to steal my ideas. Like all of that. That was my mindset. And I was like, I don't want to have that mindset here because I don't plan it to be a business idea anyway. Yeah. So again, very, very kind of, I don't know what the word is, but like kind of contrary to what we were trying to do. By not being stealth, we actually ended up building a great business. And it's one of the reasons why now I've learned through that that you should always be like really open to sharing your ideas, getting critical feedback ASAP, whether it's on social media or in person through people.
Yeah.
That gatekeeping, keeping it close to your chest is actually a really dumb idea in my opinion.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why you've been able to scale so much as well? Because like building consumer apps is, you know, quite difficult. I think especially when it comes to like distribution.
Yeah.
Distribution is key. Like how did you scale from, you know, deciding to you want to build this prayer app when there's already like so many other prayer apps out there that have millions of users to something that over 1 million Muslims are now using worldwide? Like how did that distribution come about?
Yeah, so I did it by accident at the time, but like if like the formula for it, the science for it is to get feedback ASAP as soon as possible. And we did that by accident. So we ended up sharing it on social media. And I think sharing it on social media and building in public and all that, it does two things. First of all, you get critical feedback immediately. So people can tell you, hey, I like this, I don't like this, etc. And also just by the viral machine, if someone likes what you're building, generally speaking, that tweet will go quite viral.
Yeah.
Post. You might have to do it a few times before you get there because there's other factors involved. But the point is that people will latch onto it because if people like what they see, they'll engage with it.
Yeah.
And then the other side, so you get the kind of virality scale and you also get the kind of feedback. Now with Pillars, alhamdulillah, it turned out to be something that people really wanted. And I think the reasons are because, like you say, there's loads of prayer apps, but what differentiates us from them, we're much cleaner, I'd like to say.
Nice.
We don't have the whole cluttered like UI, like our interface, our design. We don't have ads that like pop up all the time every time you open the app. And then at the same time, we're kind of very transparent. We have that privacy focused mindset. We don't take any data from your phone. Like we don't need your like specific GPS location. So we don't collect it. We leave it on the phone. The phone calculates your prayer times. We don't need to kind of take it server side. And so that was our kind of differentiating factor from just being
everyone else and being
from
able to
everyone
scale
else. But my point is that you can do it two ways. We could have gate kept Pillars, kept it super quiet, built it all and like kind of had no feedback because we wanted to keep it very stealth and quiet, and then launched it on the App Store. Would we have got what we got, which was like 15,000 downloads on the first weekend?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Like it's impossible. Like it's so difficult to do that. Yeah. But what we did is built up traction, built up hype, built up interest previously and got feedback because the product kept iterating up until launch day rather than launch day and then having to get traction and feedback, etc. So I am a big fan of that.
Yeah, it's quite surprising because I think for a lot of people, like they're still quite shy about things. Like for them, like they still think that the best way to do is like, I don't want to, you kind of mentioned it yourself, like, you know, there's this fear that someone like might steal your idea, which is like, you know, completely dumb. You know, like the upside benefit, especially in your case of building in public is that, you know, so many people are going to see your stuff, you're going to get instant feedback and that builds hype at the same time. Yeah. So by the time you even launch, like, you know, something's already like, you know, pre-sold it effectively. So when people see that you're live, you know, they already know what it is. They already like bought into the mission. Exactly. Compare that to someone else. Like if you're building in secret, like no one's paying attention to you, no one's looking at you. And by the time you launch, like no one's going to care. And perhaps you built something that, you know, someone doesn't actually really need.
Exactly. I think it's a win-win situation. Like people think that if I get negative feedback, I've somehow lost. But actually it's a win. Feedback, whether it's good or bad feedback, in the sense that are they for or against your product, is all good because it's saving you time, right? If I know on day one or in the first like few weeks that my app isn't quite hitting a pain point, or maybe the solution that I built doesn't quite solve it as well as I thought it did. If I know that in month one, rather than building it in stealth for over 6 months, and then month 6, after I spent so much time, so much money, maybe even engineers, I've brought in engineers, all of that, month 6, it's not helpful. I mean, if you go to like YC and things like that, one of the earliest things they tell you to do is to go and talk to your customers. Like go, because they're very B2B focused. Like they mostly want businesses that are building for other businesses. They'll get you to go and say, okay, you want to solve a problem for banks, for example, or for like, let's say banks. Go to the bank, talk to as many banks as possible and try and find out what is like the top 3 problems that they're facing. Like what really makes them rip their hair out every day. And that is the thing and then talk to more just to check that this is a problem that's across industry and not specific to one company. And then you double down on that idea. And B2B, like building for business, a bit different to B2C, but that's kind of what I do with social media. You've got people on social media. Yeah. What's the fastest way that I can talk to people in the world? I can't talk to 100,000 people in a day, but I can send a tweet out that does that, can't I? So if I send that out, that's how I address B2C. For B2B, going to businesses, maybe posting on LinkedIn is like another good way, because obviously a lot of businesses and business owners are on LinkedIn. That's kind of how I approach it. Yeah.
No, makes sense. Yeah. I know that you when you graduated, you went into medicine.
Yeah.
Got the title and everything.
Yeah.
I should call you Dr. Abdul Rahman. But where did you make this decision that you want to leave that behind just to focus on like other tech ventures?
Yeah.
Where did that like mentality switch come from?
So I finished medical school, and then in medical school in the UK, you have to do a year before you get your full license. And I didn't really want to leave before I got my full license. So I got my full license. I spent literally like 8 years of my life by that point, or let's say 7 years, like 1 year application, 6 years of medical school. And I was like, I can't leave just before, like a year before I get my full registration. So I was like, let me complete that. And then, so I actually did 2 years. I didn't do 1 year because foundation in the UK is 2 years. And then came a point where, okay, in the UK, you do medical school, then you do 2 years foundation. And I had a really good foundation job. I was like an academic foundation. So it wasn't like a normal doctor role. It was like more of an academic one. Yes. I got to do teaching, which was something else that I enjoyed doing. And I was like a teaching fellow at Cambridge and UCL. So I enjoyed that. So I thought, let me do this. And I was obviously doing pillars on the side at the same time. And then it comes to a point where you now apply for specialities. You either go into specialities or you go and do something else. This was like the best time for me to like, I've got my full registration. I haven't gone into training, because once you're in training, it's hard to like kind of just start doing other things.
Yeah, you're like committed for like another few years. For
exactly. You've got to go through training. You can take years out, but it's exceptional. You have to have good reasons. It's etc. You can't just do like 3-4 years out. You have to like kind of take 1 year out and come back. It's not something like, you're restricted basically.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what, this is a great space. They call it an F3, which is not even an official term, but it's like the gap that exists between foundation and specialty training. And people do loads of quite interesting things as doctors. Some people go and work in New Zealand and Australia because they pay better, so they kind of build up a bit of a savings pot. Some people go and work in consultancies. I know at least, not even 2, I know like 4 or 5 people in just 1 single year, all Muslim as well, who at my university, who all went into consulting.
What's the appeal of that?
So for some, I think for a lot it was lifestyle, like improvement, like lifestyle and money, like aspects.
It's funny you say that, because consulting isn't like known to have like the best lifestyle as well, right?
Well, yeah, but compared to medicine, everything's relative, right? So like, yeah, you're right. Consulting, although I think it really depends on A, the firm, and B, the team you're on.
That's true.
Because from what some of them, when I was talking to them, they were like saying how a lot of them were like consultants during COVID as well.
Okay.
So from what I understood, they were chilling quite a lot and getting paid for it. So maybe that there's a bit of disparity there. But yeah, you're generally right, consultancy. But I think the difference is even if you take that, is like you're still not going to be working. I don't like to compare too much, but I don't think you're going to work as hard or harder. Let's just say harder than a doctor. Yeah. But you're definitely working in a nice environment. Yeah. You're in nice offices. You're going out to nice restaurants. Yeah. You're getting paid really well.
Yeah, you probably will be getting paid a lot more, especially compared to NHS doctors.
So you're working the same, but you're getting like kind of compensated for it, whether it's at work or outside of work, much better. So, but interestingly enough, some of them actually came back. Half of them, I would say, came back, and the other half stayed. Like some went to like Dubai and UAE, work in the firms there, and some in London. And then 2 of them actually came back to NHS training. Interesting enough, and they admitted it. They knew they were getting a pay cut, but for them it was fulfillment. So it's interesting how different people take it. But anyway, back to the F3. So people do consultancy. Some people go abroad. Some people do what we call locuming, which is kind of like freelancing for doctors. Yeah. And there's like fill gaps where they come up, and they get paid quite well for that, or they used to. That's kind of changed. But anyway, that's it. So I was like, you know what? Let me. Like, this is my F3.
Good time to like break away.
Exactly. My F3 is going to be this. Let me like take this seriously, work on it full time. I've really wanted to work on it full time for a long time. This is the best chance I'm going to have. And if things go well, then alhamdulillah, like I can double down on it. And if things don't go well, then I can always go back on my degree. Yeah.
Was the thinking to like go full time into pillars, or is this kind of where the Jibreel app kind of story comes along?
Yeah. So I mean, I see both Jibreel and pillars being quite similar. They both, for the Muslim community, both apps, kind of both B2C. So I don't see that being different. But yeah, I mean, I learned a lot building pillars, and I've applied all those lessons to Jibreel. And Jibreel was another problem that I've noticed. I faced myself, but also noticed in the community during Go on.
Well, I was gonna ask, like, what is the Jibreel app?
So Jibreel is the Duolingo for fiqh.
Yeah.
If I put it that way, it's the easiest way to understand it. The idea is that Muslims don't know their fard ayn. They don't know the kind of most obligatory knowledge that every single Muslim needs to do. We do obligatory acts like pray and fast and wudu and ghusl and all of these things. To be able to do those acts correctly, we need to know the knowledge that is required for those obligatory acts. And that knowledge, because the acts are obligatory, is also obligatory. So what we're trying to do is break that down. Right now, if you want to do that, you have to go onto like an online seminary, or you go into a masjid and you do it. If they offer it, go once a week, or you have to find your own teacher. Teachers based everywhere. Generally speaking, it's more like the very old school way of learning. And I think the world's moved on. People now search on TikTok when they want to find out a hotel review. They use Duolingo if they want to learn a language. They don't go to a language class every Thursday night, right?
Yeah.
But we're still doing...
But do you not think for like Islamic knowledge that that's intentional and like that should be like that for like a specific reason?
Yes and no. I absolutely think that this is critical for anyone who wants to do anything beyond the obligatory. So there's a kind of a line where I don't think Jibreel is suitable at all or appropriate at all to be teaching people like intermediate or advanced fiqh, for example, because I think that something like that needs to be face-to-face with the teacher and needs the guidance of a teacher. But we're talking about something that needs to be learned by every single layman Muslim, right? So 2 billion almost Muslims, they need to learn this. It's impossible for all of those people to be educated face-to-face with a scholar, especially in the world that we exist in now. So I think just like how the printing press kind of revolutionized how we learn knowledge, there was a time in history where the printing press was almost like pushed back against.
Rejected from like the leaders of the time.
Exactly. And that actually stifled a lot of Muslim kind of growth and innovation and just general understanding of Islam. And so I think we're at that point where the printing press, like our new revolution is like, how do you learn from tech? But it has to be done in a very careful way. Like, I'll be honest with you, it's not like I'm not going to be someone who's like, yeah, let's go all in on tech. And like I've seen the ChatGPTs,
Sheikh
GPT. I've seen that. Even Google there's a lot of problems with like just Googling, and that's what people are doing now, by the way, right? If you're trying to figure out, are you a traveler? So you can do the traveling prayers. What do people usually do? They Google. What do they get on Google? They get like 4 or 5 different pages. Every single one is saying something different. Every single one is different madhab. You don't even know if they're all part of the Sunni madhab or whatever.
Usually I just go to Islam QA and find the answer that I'm looking for.
Islam QA as well, but is that the madhab that the person is from? Is it consistent with the other things that they're doing? Right? So for me, that's like, it's like almost like jigsaw. It's like a Frankensteinian kind of version of learning Islam.
How are you then like approaching it? Like, obviously like you mentioned it yourself, there's like different schools of thoughts, different opinions. Yeah. Well, how's your like kind of focus in terms of, are you building it for like one specific madhab? That's one aspect. And then how do you ensure that, it's staying true to like the Quran and Sunnah and the fiqh or the methodology to have like scholars on board as well?
Absolutely. So really good questions. So 4 schools of thought in the Sunni kind of, so Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanafi and Hanbali. We're in the UK or the West, let's just say. So most people come from a kind of a South Asian Desi background. Yeah. Those people are usually Hanafi. So when we spoke to scholars, they all said to us, look, if you're going to start with a madhab, first of all, we are doing madhabs. Like for those who are like not sure, we've like the majority, the mainstream believe that you have to follow a madhab unless you're a mujtahid, which is like 0.0001% of us, right? So all of us have to follow a madhab, and which one? The question is now which one to pick. Now all of them said, okay, you're in the West. Most of the people are Hanafi or come from backgrounds where there's Hanafi scholars and etc. So let's start with Hanafi. So we are starting with Hanafi, but we plan to expand to all 4 madhabs over time. It just makes most sense to start with the most popular one. So yeah, we're doing that now. Obviously, me and my brother who are building this together, we're not scholars ourselves. We're laymen, but what we're trying to do is be the bridge between the tech world and the kind of Islamic world. Yeah. And because these guys don't usually talk very well, like unfortunately, there's not much collaboration that takes place. So alhamdulillah, what we did is we reached out to some very well-known institutions and kind of the leaders of those institutions, and they connected us with their scholars and students in those institutions. Amazing. And those people are the scholars that are on our app, alhamdulillah. So those are all Hanafi experts. Some of them are muftis, some of them are just like below muftis, etc. The point is that we have and they obviously, their teachers are extremely knowledgeable as well. So yeah, basically what we have is scholars on our kind of board. They review all our content, they make sure everything's clear, and we use obviously verified sources for everything.
Makes sense, yeah. What does the experience look like going on the app? Like, is it
can I show on camera?
Go for it, yeah. My editor can add it.
I'll show you photos, but basically, I don't know if it's possible to kind of like, I was actually doing it on the way here.
Okay, nice.
But like basically like what you get is, I don't know if it's going to be that camera or not, but basically like it's a very like Duolingo-y style UI, obviously different, a bit, I would say less playful, but just because we're doing Islamic knowledge.
Is it like quizzes and stuff?
Yeah, there is. So like, for example, this is about the obligatory integrals of wudu, like what's needed in wudu. So, and you do have quizzes, like this is a quiz, like which of the following are obligatory acts of wudu, etc.
Yeah.
So you would answer like, basically make sure that you've learned it, but also make sure that you know how to apply it. Because sometimes it's like, the theory is one thing, but actually learning to apply it, like if you're a traveler, when do you become a traveler?
Yeah.
You're going from London to Birmingham. Are you a traveler when you've just walked out the house, or are you only a traveler once you leave the city boundaries, etc., etc.?
It's the second one.
Yeah, you're good. I know that you're good at your
I know my stuff.
Hanafi fiqh. Yeah,
I try my best.
So yeah, that's basically how
sense,
we do it.
yeah. How do you like deal with these like kind of criticism when people say like, oh, it's bid'ah, it's like, it's an innovation. Yeah.
Okay, I haven't had that one yet.
But
how would you like? What would, if that person were to make the argument, in what way would it be bid'ah?
I don't know. I just feel as if it kind of goes back to like what I was saying before, in terms of obviously you're kind of like pushing the boundary in terms of like what's kind of been done before. Obviously, we're now like using tech, innovation, AI, for Islamic classical kind of stuff in a way that's, potentially not been done before as well. So obviously it's like a fine line to kind of like balance. So, I guess like, what would you like say to those people in terms of, because I think it's coming from a place of, people don't say it because like they hate the religion. They're trying to be they're trying to take the more conservative approach. Yeah. So like, obviously it's coming from a place of like love of the religion. I think people are too quick to shun these people off and be like, they're closed-minded, whatever. But I do agree there is an element of truth. Like we can't just open the floodgates and say, use, ChatGPT or AI for like all Islamic kind of stuff. So yeah, how do you like kind of balance that? How do you kind of explain to people to bring them along on your journey?
Okay, so first of all, like you have to go back to the scholars. I think where it's problematic is if you just decide that you want to go full steam ahead and you haven't really involved scholars. So one of the earliest things that we did is speak to scholars and say, look, this is what we're thinking about doing, like the whole Duolingo for fiqh. Yeah. Are you on board? And actually, from quite well-known people, I named them, but I haven't got their permission, so I don't want to do it. Sure. They were all very happy and very keen for something like this to exist because they recognize a problem that exists in society, the same problem that we're trying to solve, that most people don't know their fardain, their fiqh. Yeah. And they can see this being a breakthrough way of getting to people. So from their perspectives, like obviously they're scholars, they are the ones who would say and be able to say whether this is like permissible or not permissible. Like that's literally their job. Yeah. I'm going to take from them. If the layman wants to come up and say this is bid'ah or not, I mean, it's more difficult for me to go back to them if I've already got backing from really well-known and reputable scholars, and not just like one, but like a network of them, Yeah. And so for me, that's like kind of that's the litmus test, right? Yeah. I don't know how else to come back to that, but the reality is there will be people who might not feel that it's appropriate for them, for whatever reason. And what I always say to people is like, look, Jibreel, it doesn't necessarily, first of all, Jibreel is only for that kind of obligatory foundational level. We're not trying to, if you want to become a student of knowledge, a scholar, you're not going to be doing it through Jibreel. Yeah. You need to go to an institution, you need to go to a teacher. So that's not for that crowd. And even within the foundational element, there will be some people who don't learn well through these ways, like through an app. Yeah. And those people should learn through going to a teacher or online classes, etc. And I don't think that's a problem. I mean, I think we're just giving people extra options on terms of how they learn. I hope that it appeals to the masses. Like that's why a lot of people haven't learned it, is because we don't currently have options that are suitable for the masses.
Yeah.
But there will be people who still prefer going to a teacher, having a face-to-face. And that's absolutely fine. And I don't think we want to replace those people. We just want to be sitting beside them. So personally, I mean, the bid'ah things, specifically, I'd say I'd leave it to the scholars. But in terms of the like method of learning, I think like really it's each onto their own, to be honest.
Fair enough. Yeah. Is the plan to like make this into a business, or is this going to be like a non-profit kind of type thing?
Yeah.
And then if it is like a for-profit, like how do you kind of like navigate that line? Because I feel like for some people, again, this is something I've heard before, speaking to Shanaz from like Nia, like, you know, people do like criticize and be like, oh, you know, Islamic knowledge or content or something like should be free. Like how do you kind of address that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I saw a recent app that went viral, and the reviews were really low, and like 80 or 90% of them, they got viral through like loads of social media.
Yeah.
80 or 90% of the comments were just like, can't believe there's a paywall. So I'm not looking forward to like that experience of like, I can't believe this is paid, this is app subscription. So I think there's two elements to this. One is like, why is it paid? And the other of it, why are you for profit? To be honest, like those are slightly separate.
Sure.
The paid aspect, that is like, you've got to realize the people who are working behind this are like, when you go use Uber and you have a really good experience with it, or when you use Airbnb and you have a really good experience with it, that's because there's teams of engineers and like designers and like they make sure that you have unbelievably amazing experience, right?
Of course, yeah.
They're full time, they're getting paid, etc. If you want the Muslim infrastructure and apps to be that way, you can't. Unfortunately, there's a lot of apps on the App Store that were built for by like volunteers, and 99% of them are not maintained or don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And the reason is because they don't work on them full time. So if you want to build amazing infrastructure that really solves problems and helps move the community forward as Muslims, then we need to build things that are paid, that can be, the money is used to like pay for engineers and teams to go full time, put all their heart and soul and work on it 24/7 so that they can really, really push it forward. So that's like why I think, and I think there's quite a lot of people who've talked about this. I think Chris from LaunchGood has talked about it. You've said Shanaz talked about it. I don't imagine my answer is going to be too different from his.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's like a critical aspect to it.
Yeah.
But I think for some people, like there's really good institutions that do fiqh, but they choose, that's just that they've made a decision that, look, we're going to do it as a donation-led organization. So everything that we give is free, but the way that we raise money for the platform and pay everyone is through donations.
Okay.
My experience is that that's a really hard model to keep as a sustainable. It requires constant cycles of fundraising, and I generally am not keen to do that. But and the other thing I noticed is that there are very well-known organizations that do provide. So that's one group, but there's another group of like fiqh schools that have paid. Like you pay like $100 a month, or you pay $20 a month.
Of course, yeah.
Our price actually, when I look at any of those, is always much lower.
Yeah.
Like if you compare the year-to-year price or even the month-to-month price, we're much lower. So if anything, the existing solutions that I don't think work for most people are actually much more expensive than what we're planning to do.
Yeah.
But I think, to be honest with you, it's not about whether it's expensive or cheap too much. It's more about, are people willing to pay, yes or no?
Yeah.
And I just think we have a problem as a community mindset that like we have some sort of aversion to, like, by the way, like historically people would pay their teachers to teach them fiqh.
Yeah.
That was normal. That wasn't problematic in the Islamic tradition. So I think we need to kind of reset that mindset, because if we don't, we might be pushing ourselves backwards.
Yeah.
And we might end up putting ourselves in a situation where we actually we're not moving as fast as the world is, and that's what's happened. Is I think there's also an aversion. I don't know if you agree with this actually, but I think there's an aversion when I look at the entrepreneurs around me. I'm actually surprised no one really wants to be working in this space.
Interesting.
But I reflect on it and I think, you know what, this is probably the why.
Yeah.
Right? Why does none of our innovative Muslims want to work in the Muslim tech space? Because no one feels like it's it's not going to be a profitable area.
Yeah.
They just associate it with being really hard, with a slog. Selling to Muslims is hard. You've heard that word, like selling to Muslims is hard, it's impossible, etc., etc. What if we do that? No one wants to build things to our community. And that unfortunately is the reason why you don't get so many solutions. That's why the apps that we use are really, really not great.
I mean, from my experience working at IFG and like working with like Muslim investors, Muslim consumers, I mean, it is fulfilling in one part. It is nice, helping people who look like me, who are like older, who might not appreciate the fact that things like this like haven't been here before, and it is nice when they say things to us. But at the same time, if you've ever like worked in a mosque or a charity, you've definitely like felt this, where there is a little bit of entitlement when it comes to like Muslim consumers. They feel as if if you like don't do this for me, this is my haq, you're a Muslim app, you're a Muslim business, and you're not giving me XYZ. Like I would say there is a small proportion of it, but it is still like a decent proportion. Like you do come across it on a somewhat like semi like regular kind of basis. And I think that's the thing, like scares people off because they don't want to deal with that. But at the same time, like, people like yourself, we're doing it for a great purpose. Like your motivation isn't so, that someone comes on the street and like shakes your hand. We do it because, we are trying to focus on the akhirah. We're building something that is going to help us in the next life. The monetary aspect of it is kind of like a secondary thought. In terms of like why people like don't then, focus on something like this, I think is a little bit of a monetary thing. Like, both of us are the same age. We're in like mid-20s. We're smart. We have like all these kind of like different options in front of us. I think for a lot of us, like, perhaps, we might not have seen, money in like our generation or generation before. And like they might want to, do something that's going to benefit them, at least in like the short to medium term. While at the same time, they can still like do things on the side a little bit. Like I feel as if, when I was in university, all I thought about was, making money and everything. Now that I'm a little bit older, I'm kind of, okay, money is not everything, and you can make money like and still have like social impact. You can still like benefit the community. But I don't think for most people, like they've kind of like married up that a little bit. I think for me, just because of the fact that I have worked at one of the few like successful organizations that are quite profitable or like quite successful, and they also, benefit the community at the same time. Like I see it's possible. Whereas like for other people, like it's still something a little bit new. Like it's not like as well done. We are seeing like a few more case studies coming, Kuwait, Wahid, Tartil, that are coming about. So I do feel as if things will change as time go on.
I think we do need like that breakthrough. Like once you have a few examples and like role models for the community, not just as individuals, but businesses that people can look to and go, look, that's a Muslim run and Muslim catering business. Not catering in the food sense, but like servicing Muslims, then perhaps that will break the stigma a little bit. I do agree with that. I mean, like when I think about it, I think what do Muslims do really well business-wise? Food and fashion, modest fashion, right? I feel like those two things, like we've got that on lock. Like we've completely smashed those two things, but we just need to show that we can actually do it beyond those two things, because those are two very like limited industries. We want to obviously look at how can, in the finance industry, how can we build like we're building solutions for ourselves, food. Why? Because we did it out of necessity, because we realized that we need halal food. And so we're going to try and cater Muslims. So we're going to build restaurants that serve halal food, right? The fashion industry, we built that because we realized that like when you go and buy from normal like stores, they don't cater for the modest fashion that Muslim women and Muslim men need to wear, right? So that's why those industries were born. And so I think we just need to kind of apply that to the same kind of extent to other spaces. Like IFG, what's IFG trying to do? Build solutions products that are halal for Muslims.
Away from riba and stuff like this.
Exactly. And so on. So I think like it is just about breaking through. And I think like once you have one of those examples and role models, perhaps that would then encourage others to do it.
What's your advice for like, because I feel like there are like a lot of Muslims in universities, they have these thoughts, they might, follow you on Twitter and see like what you're getting up to. What's your advice for them? If they want to build something for the community, but they don't know like, what's the next steps to take. I don't know how to approach it. I don't know what to build. Like, how would you advise them for exploring different ideas? How would you advise them in terms of like building something? And then I would also caveat that in terms of, at the same time, they might be getting pressure to, go into like a traditional like kind of corporate job, because I feel like that's like the big thing. I always like hear someone, when I speak to people, they're always like, I want to do this, but you know, I have to go to like McKinsey or whatever. How would you advise them on like going into this path?
It's really hard for, I think we Muslims, you said it yourself, right? We come from backgrounds that are like low socioeconomic backgrounds. I think there was like a BBC article that I once read that compared all faith groups, including atheists as a faith group. And they looked at how much their earning is across groups, and Muslims are the lowest of all of them, including the atheist group. And so I think there's a realization that you have to do that it's really difficult for people, because you know that like point where you're kind of graduating, you're getting older, a lot of people's parents are getting older, and you want to kind of decide what you're going to do. And that corporate job's paying really well, let's be honest, right? And you've got option of doing entrepreneurship, which is high risk. I think at that point, are you really, as someone who comes from a very low economic background, going to take the extra risk after doing all of that to do entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
I don't think that's like a real prospect. So I think it's kind of a bit of a vicious cycle in a way of like, how do you get the Muslim community to be strong enough as a foundational level? Because like if you came from a background where you're like, money's not a concern, like your parents are wealthy and you are like, the reality is you are more likely to there's this whole actually discussion with Paul Graham. I don't know if you ever saw his tweet.
On what was the discussion?
It was about, so Paul Graham is one of the founding fathers of like YC.
Yeah.
And so his argument, and there was a big tech Twitter kind of startup debate. His argument was like, it doesn't necessarily, I don't want to misquote him, but he doesn't necessarily impact you or limit you if you come from a background that we shouldn't discourage people from doing entrepreneurship. Like basically the tweet was something along the lines of, when you're wealthy, you can have as many shots on the dartboard as possible, because let's say you miss the board. It's fine. You've got your dad's paying for your stuff, or you're living at your parents or whatever. You're good. Like it's not, you can keep taking dart shots. When you're someone who comes from a low background, you might have one dart if you have that dart.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? You're going to avoid like entrepreneurship. You're not going to take many shots, or you're not going to take any shots at all. Whereas rich folk can do that, or people who come from rich backgrounds. Yeah. So anyway, that was just a whole discussion on, you could probably like...
I saw this online. I found it interesting. Paul Graham was disagreeing with that kind of sentiment.
Yes, that was interesting.
Which I thought interesting as well, because I actually like do agree with this kind of sentiment.
Yeah.
That, you know, and you kind of see it yourself. I'm someone who's like a VC investor within the UK. Like majority of like startups I see, you know, do come from, you know, Oxbridge. Is like, you know, polished, you know, white guys who come from private school and whatnot. That is still like the bulk of, you know, startups that's coming through, especially in the UK. The US is a bit of a different story, and I feel as if that's where the argument's coming, because the culture there is slightly different. But, you know, just speaking from like a UK kind of perspective, like I do feel as if like privilege does play a little bit a part in it, and I do feel as if you mentioned it yourself, the fact that for a lot of, you know, young Muslims, it's a very real reality with the fact that they do feel like they have to earn and to like support the family in some sort of way. Maybe in like a generation or two generations where, you know, we're a little bit more developed, and, you know, their children will be able to go and like build something, and that might take a bit of time to do. But in some kind of cases, and to be fair, it would be good to get your take on this, because I feel like this is where like VC funding might come into play a little bit, because I feel as if, you know, if you do raise from VCs, like it does like de-risk a little bit. You're not going to be earning, you know, 6 figures as you will in banking and consulting. Yeah. But, you know, if you do raise like a decent pre-seed round or go to an accelerator, you know, you'll be able to, you know, have like a decent salary that can pay the bills and everything.
This is a really interesting thing that I was actually going to post about on the other day on one of the tech group chats that I'm in. And you're right. Like, a lot of people apply to accelerators where it's like EF, Entrepreneurs First, or like YC, EF's in the UK more so, I would say. They apply there because one of the big benefits they get is like they get a chunk of money or a salary or stipend to basically cover their costs. So like you're not just dropping your job and then living off savings immediately. You actually do have pay covering you so that you can like basically explore and do your entrepreneurship thing for at least 1 to 2 years to just basically try things out. And if it goes well, then amazing. If it doesn't go well, you were paid the whole time, so it's not like you lost out on a salary. The worst case is that you have to find a new job basically, but you haven't like lost out financially in that time. So and in the US, I think there's other like kind of nuances. Like I didn't know this, but apparently in the US, like if you take time out from university, like let's say you're a Stanford student, you can take time out do the entrepreneurship thing, like try it out. Let's say you get into YC, try it out, and then if it doesn't work out, you can come back and carry on. Whereas in the UK, that like kind of approach to like taking time out of university and coming back, universities don't allow. Yeah, it doesn't exist. The US kind of lets you. Someone told me this. I haven't confirmed this, but apparently you can go 10, 20 years, like middle of your degree, 10, 20 years, do something and then come back and decide you want to finish the degree.
Graduate when you're 35.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true. But if it's true, I think that's actually quite a big breakthrough in terms of how your mindset is, because they've de-risked it for you, right?
Yeah.
Your concern is, what if I drop out and it's like an all or nothing decision, I can't drop out. Because if I drop out, I'm going to lose out on this degree. But if you know that you can come back to it, that kind of risk-taking mindset is sky high. And if you have that risk-taking mindset, out of the 100 people that do that, let's say 2 or 3 people do really well, for the community, for the economy, for the US, that's great. But here we have a very conservative background. It's like you're almost like you've got to stick to the corporate route. You've got to go through a degree. You've got to go that. If you do the business thing, it's just high risk.
Yeah.
It's super high risk and there's nothing de-risking you. The accelerators are far and few. The investors are much fewer. They're less likely to throw money at you compared to the US.
Yeah.
The degree stuff that we spoke about, it's just a completely different environment and dynamic that just caters for one caters for entrepreneurship and the other one does not cater for entrepreneurship, caters for the corporate world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the big issues. Now, what I've noticed is a lot of Muslims here in the UK who are corporate people working in big tech potentially or in the consultancies who are applying to places like YC and other accelerators. And they're just basically throwing applications every round.
Yeah.
Now, YC is doing it 4 times. They're doing it 4 times a year. And I don't know, if I'm completely honest, if that's the right mindset personally, because their approach is, look, I'm going to apply, and if I get it, because obviously it's a big check, then I'm going to take that check and I'm good. Like basically they just want like the lowest risk approach to this. Yeah. If I get in, I got the money and then I do it. If I don't get in, I'm going to carry on my corporate job.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to do business and startups, like those people are people who've been in corporate for a while, they've built up savings, they have the opportunity to build things on the side. It's not like they can't. They can definitely do it. Like that's a different crowd that I was talking about, like someone who's just graduated.
Yeah.
I think those people really do need to think about it. Like, am I actually looking to build a business here?
Yeah.
And am I looking to actually kind of solve problems, or am I just looking for basically a new career? Like they're almost like corporatizing and productizing the accelerator route.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a problem for them. Even motivationally, it's problematic when you think about it.
Yeah. Because they only want to do this if it works out in this perfect kind of scenario.
Yeah.
But the reality, I do completely agree with what you said. And I was having a similar conversation last week. We have like the same friends, so I feel like, you know, could be thinking about the same people as well. But it's exactly this, you know, some people, they only have like a YC or bus kind of like mindset. They don't feel as if, you know, they want to push through and like do something. But the reality is, you know, building a business, you know, is long, it's dirty, you have to like roll up your sleeves. Like it's not going to be like easy. And they kind of feel as if, you know, you kind of say that you kind of like productize, you know, this founder kind of path, founder kind of journey, which is okay. Like, you can go in that path, but it's not the only way to like build a business. And I do feel as if we need more people going in these spaces, building these kind of businesses. But, you know, if we're only going to allow ourselves to do it through this like, one particular path, then there's not going to be a lot of change over the next kind of couple of generations.
Exactly.
Just on this point though, like, what should be like the why for like, you know, building something in tech? It doesn't have to be like specifically like Muslim tech, but, you know, why should like people go into this path in the first place? Like, I feel like for some people, they might just feel like, you know, going up the ranks in the corporate, earning good money, you know, get involved where they can. Like, why should someone like go into this path in the first place?
There's loads of angles I can tackle this with. And just on that last point, I think accelerators do see through people who do have those intentions.
Yeah.
Like, I think they can tell if you're kind of just looking for an easy way out, basically. Of
some people are doing an application. Some people are actually like trying to buy a business. Like they can see through which is which.
I think so, yeah. But yeah, on the terms of why Muslims should even bother with entrepreneurship, basically, there's so many angles of it. I think the most pressing angle is more about the shifting nature of the world, the technology world. I think sometimes even maybe you also don't really appreciate that we're in a bubble. And what we see with like Replit and OpenAI and ChatGPT models, like we see the tweets of like literally when the models come out, like immediately. But like if you look at like the actual number of people in the world who are kind of aware of these things, the vast majority, just like with crypto, the vast majority are not engaged in this world.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a point where it catches up with everyone. And at that point, when tech and AI has really taken over people, you can't afford to be still holding that corporate position. I don't think so. You have to basically be thinking the world is accelerating at a crazy rate, where if I need to be thinking 10 years ahead. Because if I'm not, because that 10 years is going to come faster. The cycles are getting faster and faster. So I think it's almost like you don't really have a choice. I genuinely think there's a time limit on wealth creation or building a business. I think the world is really going to change quite significantly from where we are now. I don't know the time scale, but I know it's happening.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that big aspect of it that people need to do. Like the reality is, I think a lot of people are very good at dumbing down AI to be like, no, this is just going to enhance your work. It's just going to do. Every single AI startup that I know is building for an industry aims to build the AI product to be able to replace workers. Because the most expensive things for companies are workers. So how do you sell to that company? You say to them, I'm going to save you so much money and get you either the same or better output. So if it's answering emails faster, you can do it with half the people.
Yeah.
If it's checking, I don't know, like healthcare, like scans, you can get rid of half the doctors that check scans because you got the AI doing, helping doctors do it faster. So the reality is, unfortunately, that people are getting replaced with work. There are some work that is more difficult to replace than others, but it's a pathway that's happening. Some are more vulnerable. So there's that time limit aspect. Like there's genuinely a kind of like ticking time bomb when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And so that's one big one, which is more of a kind of scare factor. But in terms of like actually what it's more, the other side of it is more doing things like for the love of it and for the passion of it and for the like benefit of it. And I think that comes to like loving solving a problem. Like, is there a problem in your life that you feel passionate about? I hope people are passionate about some things in their lives. And so they pick out those problems and they think, I really feel passionate about this. And it could be different sorts of problems. I felt like this problem of like, I felt a huge vulnerability on the Muslim community's behalf that we are not in control of such an infrastructural app.
Yeah.
So I think that Muslims should own that. And I think we need to make sure that Muslims have an amazing experience. So I felt passionate about that problem when I built there. But for you, it could be something different. For you, you come from a financial background. You might feel that actually, I really hate the fact that Muslims are the lowest paid faith group in the Muslim community. Why is that? It could be because Muslims, it could be loads of reasons. It could be like for example, pensions. I know IFG's done a lot of work on pensions. It could be to do with like student finance, because I know like work has been done in the Muslim community about student finance. That puts off a lot of Muslims from going to universities because it's got interest involved. There could be loads of angles, and that could be a passion of yours.
Yeah.
I know like, for example, NZF, their work with Zakah, you could want to do something in the charity or Zakah space where you feel that actually this is something that Zakah is very revolutionary. How can I help improve that aspect? There's lots of different passion. Yeah.
I think the point that you said about like the infrastructure and the kind of like makeup of the world, like we're not fully in control of it, because you were like describing a Muslim app, and even that Muslim app itself, that was still selling data to like a third party broker.
It's like the easiest, like most basic thing that we should be making sure we're okay.
Yeah. And if that's or just a simple like Muslim like prayer app, like think about everything else. Like I'll give you a tangible example. Even think about like something like payment processing, right?
Yes.
It's something that's supposed to be neutral. Like what does that got to do with like being a Muslim? But at the same time, we're seeing like Muslim charities like Launch Good and these other people getting unbanked or turned away from these infrastructure just because of the fact that they're Muslims and they have like certain political stances. And I do feel like for payment infrastructure or other kind of things that we do need to be in control of this, even if it's not obviously like a Muslim thing. At the same time, we do still need to like take charge. We do need to build our own kind of infrastructure for like specific kind of things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that Launch Good example is like they got so fed up with getting shut down and having the payment issues that they decided, we're going to build our own payment processing solution, like alhamdulillah, they've got the resources to do something like that. Not that you necessarily need tons of resources to do these things. You can build these things even from scratch, but it helps. And I think like that just shows like it became a passion out of force because they needed it. It was necessary.